The park's emergency broadcast system activated last night. The message was just one word repeated: pretend. Welcome to the Wilderness Protocol. We have systems in place for emergencies, alarms for fire, sirens for storms, protocols for evacuation. They are designed to create order in chaos, to provide clear instructions in moments of fear. But what do you do when the system itself becomes the source of the terror? What is the protocol for an instruction that is not a solution, but a horrifying new rule in a game you don't understand? My name is David. Ayami was the lead maintenance technician for the communications grid in Bridger-Teton National Forest. My job was to maintain the systems that keep people safe. The radios, the repeaters, the emergency broadcast network. Last night, that network activated. It did not warn of a fire. It did not warn of a storm. It delivered a single endlessly repeating instruction that has since become the law of this new, terrible reality. Told us to pretend. The communications hub for the Bridger-Teton region is a lonely place. It's a small, windowless concrete building, tucked away on a high, windy plateau, surrounded by a sea of aspen and pine. It's filled with the gentle, constant hum of servers and the smell of ozone and old coffee. For 5 years, this has been my world. I maintain the hardware that connects the rangers, the fire lookouts, and the visitor centers across 2 million acres of rugged, unforgiving wilderness. It's a quiet job. I thought I knew every sound this place could make. The whine of a failing capacitor, the click of a relay switch, the hiss of the static on a quiet channel. Last night, I heard a new sound. It started at precisely 2:17 a.m. I was running a routine diagnostic on the emergency broadcast system, a powerful network of speakers placed strategically throughout the park's developed areas: campsites, trailheads, visitor centers. It's a system designed for catastrophic events, a way to deliver clear, concise warnings to thousands of people at once. It hadn't been activated for a real emergency in over a decade. I was sitting at my console nursing a lukewarm cup of coffee when a single red light on the main broadcast panel began to blink. It was the system active indicator. My first thought was that I had triggered it accidentally during my diagnostic. I checked my terminal. I hadn't sent any commands. Then the master audio relay clicked on. A heavy, solid thunk that echoed through the quiet building. The system was arming itself. A cold knot of dread formed in my stomach. This was not a drill. This was not a test. Something somewhere had triggered the park's most powerful alarm. I immediately tried to open a channel to the main ranger station to find out what was happening: a wildfire, a flash flood, a missing child? But before I could even key the microphone, the broadcast began. It wasn't the usual pre-recorded, calm but authoritative voice of the park superintendent. It wasn't the piercing, high-low tone of an emergency siren. It was a voice I had never heard before. It was a synthesized voice like the ones from the early days of computing, but it was layered, distorted, as if multiple versions of the same voice were speaking at once, all slightly out of sync. It was a sound that was both digital and deeply organically wrong. And it spoke only one word: pretend. The word echoed from my monitor speakers, a flat, emotionless command. Then a moment of silence. And then again. Pretend. I stared at the console, my mind struggling to comprehend what was happening. This had to be a malfunction. A catastrophic system error. A corrupted audio file. I tried to override the system to initiate a shutdown. The console was unresponsive. My keyboard was dead. I was locked out. The broadcasts continued, a relentless, hypnotic loop. Pretend. 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 The word was now being blasted from every speaker in the park. From the small PA horn at the Granite Creek Campground 20 miles to the south, to the powerful siren array at the Calter Bay Visitor Center 50 miles to the north. 2 million acres of pristine wilderness were now being saturated with a single, insane instruction. I grabbed the emergency landline, a direct, hardwired phone to the ranger station. It was dead. Not just no dial tone. Utter, complete silence, as if the line itself had been physically cut. Panic, cold and sharp, began to rise in my throat. I ran to the heavy steel door of the hub and looked through the small reinforced peephole. The plateau outside was bathed in the cold, blue light of a full moon. The aspen trees were still, their leaves like a million silver coins in the darkness. The world looked exactly as it should. Normal. Peaceful. But the air itself was vibrating with that single, synthesized, endlessly repeating word. I spent the next hour in a frantic, useless cycle of trying to regain control of my own system. Nothing worked. I was a prisoner in my own control room, forced to listen to the broadcast I was supposed to command. And then I began to see the reports. The internal network was still online, a closed loop within the park. And the automated sensors were still feeding data to my terminal. 2:48 a.m. motion sensor at Ginny Lake Trailhead triggered. No visual confirmation. 2:53 a.m. heat signature detected near Phelps Lake Overlook. Signature does not match any known fauna. Signature is tall. 3:01 a.m. All seismic sensors in the southern Teton Range are reporting a low-level, rhythmic tremor. Not an earthquake. The pattern is synchronized. Like footsteps. I watched the data scroll by, my blood turning to ice. Something was out there. Something was moving. And the broadcast, the system I was in charge of, was not warning people about it. It was giving them instructions on how to behave for it. The first human report came at 3:12 a.m. It was a text-based message from a ranger named Miller, one of the old-timers who patrolled the backcountry. His messages were usually calm, full of laconic wit. This one was anything but. Miller, what the hell is that broadcast, Dave? Is that you? Me? Negative. System is compromised. I'm locked out. What do you see? Miller, see? I don't see anything. But I hear it. The whole valley is ringing with it. And the animals, God, the animals have gone dead silent. Me, stay put. Barricade your cabin. I'm trying to get control. Miller, it's not just the animals, Dave. My neighbor. Old Man Hemlock's place. His lights are on. And I can see him through the window. He's setting his dinner table. For two. The message chilled me. Hemlock was a notorious recluse. He hadn't had a visitor in years. Me, Miller, what do you mean? Miller, he's pretending, Dave. He's pretending he has company. He's talking to an empty chair. Before I could reply, another message came through, this one from a fire lookout at the northern edge of the park. Lookout 3, comms hub, do you copy? I see people on the main park road. A family. They're having a picnic. On the asphalt. In the middle of the night. The reports kept coming. A ranger at a campground saw a group of tourists, all sitting in their camp chairs, staring placidly at a cold, dead fire pit, pretending to roast marshmallows. A maintenance worker at the Jackson Lake Lodge reported seeing a concierge, a woman he knew, standing at the front desk, smiling and checking in a guest that wasn't there. People were following the instruction. They were pretending that everything was normal. Even as the sensors painted a picture of something massive and anomalous moving through the park. And then I got the message that broke me. It was from my own partner, Sarah. She was a field biologist, stationed at a small research cabin 10 miles from my hub. She was supposed to be asleep. Sarah, Dave? Are you there? The broadcast woke me up. What's going on? Me, Sarah, lock your doors. Barricade the windows. Do not go outside. It's not a drill. Sarah, I know. But Dave, there's someone outside my cabin. Me, who? Can you see them? Sarah, I can't see them. But I can hear them. They're humming. Humming. My mind flashed to a conversation we'd had weeks ago. I'd been teasing her about the silly, off-key tune she always hummed to herself when she was content, working in her garden. A little, nonsensical melody that was uniquely, intimately hers. Me, Sarah, what are they humming? Sarah, it's my tune. The one I hum. But it's not me. It's coming from outside. How does it know my song, Dave? How? I didn't have an answer. I could only watch my screens, my heart a cold, dead weight in my chest, as the sensor for the motion detector outside her cabin began to blink. Proximity alert. Proximity alert. Me, Sarah, talk to me. What's happening? There was a long pause. I stared at the blinking cursor. My entire world narrowed to that single flashing line. Sarah, it's okay, Dave. I see him now. It's my father. My blood ran cold. Sarah's father had died 5 years ago. Sarah, he looks so young. He's smiling. He's telling me it's time for dinner. Mom's waiting. Me, Sarah, no. It's not him. It's a trick. Don't listen. Sarah, it's all right. I have to go now. I'm just going to go outside and pretend. It's easier. The motion sensor outside her cabin went from alert to tripped. The heat signature sensor flared, showing 2 distinct figures where a moment before there had been only one. Then they both moved off, away from the cabin, and disappeared into the trees. Her final message appeared a minute later. Sarah, I see now. The real emergency is remembering that it isn't real. And it's so hard to remember. Pretend with us, Dave. It's so much warmer. And then her signal went dark. I sat there in the humming, sterile silence of my control room, a universe away. The broadcast continued its relentless, single-word sermon. Pretend. 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 I finally understood the rule. I finally understood the protocol. The thing that was moving through my park, the thing that was walking on silent, rhythmic feet, the thing that could wear the face of your dead father and hum the secret songs of your heart. It didn't want to hunt you. It didn't want to kill you. Just wanted you to play along. It wanted you to sit at the table and talk to the empty chair. It wanted you to smile and wave at the guest who wasn't there. It didn't feed on fear. It fed on your denial of it. It fed on your pretense. And I understood, with a certainty that was colder and sharper than any fear I had ever known, that the only way to survive the night was to refuse to play the game. The only defense was to see the horror for what it was. But as I looked at the dark screens, at the sensor grid that was now filled with dozens of anomalous heat signatures, all moving in a slow, deliberate procession towards the main visitor center at Calter Bay, I realized the terrible truth. Most people don't want to see the horror. It is so much easier, so much warmer to just pretend. The hours between 4 a.m. and dawn were a slow, creeping nightmare documented in silent data points and frantic, garbled text messages. The entities, which I had started thinking of as the pretenders or the mimics, were not a disorganized force. They were moving with a clear, unified purpose. All the sensor data showed a convergence. They were all heading towards the park's largest hub of human activity, the Calter Bay Village. The village included a large visitor center, a marina, a campground, and a hotel. Even in the off-season, there were several hundred staff and a few dozen hardy tourists staying there. It was the park's most concentrated collection of minds to be influenced, of people to be harvested. The broadcast never faltered. That single, synthesized word was the heartbeat of this new terrible reality. Pretend. 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 It was a brainwashing signal, a psychic anesthetic designed to quell panic and enforce a strange, placid compliance. My terminal continued to light up with messages from the few rangers who were either isolated enough or strong-willed enough to resist the broadcast's pull. Miller, they're leaving their houses, Dave. All of them. They're just walking down the main road, heading north. They're not talking. They're just smiling. It's the same damn smile on every face. Look out, 3. I can see them from the tower. A procession. It looks like a parade. But there's no music. Just them. And the broadcast. I tried to coordinate them. I tried to be a commander in a war I didn't understand. Me, all units do not engage. I repeat, do not engage. Find a secure location and shelter in place until sunrise. The entities appear to be non-hostile as long as the pretense is maintained. It was a guess, a desperate hypothesis, but it was all I had. The thing wearing Sarah's father's face hadn't been violent. It had been inviting. The worst part was the silence from those who were complying. I sent messages to the main ranger station at Calter Bay, to the hotel front desk, to the security office. There were no replies. But I knew they were there. I could see the facility's internal cameras, which were, chillingly, still active. The footage was surreal. It was like watching a play directed by a madman. In the visitor center, a lone ranger stood at the information desk, pointing at a map on the wall, speaking earnestly to an empty space in front of him. In the hotel lobby, a small group of tourists sat in armchairs, their heads all turned towards a television that was turned off, their faces showing rapt attention. 2 of them were nodding, as if agreeing with the point a newscaster had made. The horror was in the details. The placid smiles. The calm, deliberate, and utterly insane actions. They were all trapped in their own private, pleasant delusions, their minds gently rocked to sleep by the broadcast's single, relentless command. They were the perfect hosts. And all the while, the sensor grid showed the anomalies, the tall, cold heat signatures moving through the forest, converging on the village. They were the shepherds, and they were gathering their flock. I felt a profound sense of helplessness, a technician watching his own machine orchestrate an apocalypse. My job was to warn people, and the only warning I could give was one they were being psychologically conditioned to ignore. It was then that I saw it. A new message on a private, encrypted channel I had set up for Sarah and myself. I had assumed it was dead. But it wasn't. Sarah. The story is beautiful. My heart stopped. It was her. But the message, it wasn't a cry for help. Me, Sarah? Where are you? Are you okay? Sarah, we are walking. He is telling us the story of the park. Not the human story. The real one. The story of the rocks, and the silence before the trees. He has a voice like a mountain. It is very old. Me, Sarah, that's not your father. You have to get away from it. You have to fight it. Sarah, why would I fight this, Dave? It's so peaceful. All the noise is gone. The worry, the deadlines, the little anxieties, they're all gone. There is only the story. There is only the pretense. And it feels more real than anything I have ever known. I was losing her. She was not a prisoner. She was a convert. Me. Where are you going? Sarah, we are going to the gathering. He says we are all going to listen together. He says we are going to be part of the story. Forever. And then she sent one final message. A message that was not for me, but was a quote, a piece of the story the entity was telling her. Sarah, and in the end, he says, the wilderness did not mind the humans. It only minded their noise. So it taught them the elegance of a beautiful lie. The channel went silent. I stood up and walked to the peephole of the main door. I don't know why. I just had to see the real world, the one outside my concrete box. The moon was beginning to set. The sky was turning a deep, bruised purple. And I saw them. They were walking across the plateau in front of the hub. A silent, single-file procession. There were dozens of them. Rangers, tourists, men, women, children. All of them with that same placid, gentle smile on their faces. They were walking north towards Calter Bay. And walking with them, interspersed between them, were the others. The pretenders. I could see them clearly now. They were tall, at least 7 feet. Their forms were indistinct, wrapped in something that looked like a shimmering heat haze in the cold night air. Their shape subtly wrong, their limbs too long, their gait too smooth. They didn't have faces. They were just elegant, beautiful, and utterly terrifying voids in the shape of men. They were the empty chairs. They were the silent guests. They were the shepherds. And as the procession passed my hub, one of the pretenders stopped. It turned its featureless head and looked directly at my door. Directly at the peephole. I didn't feel fear. I didn't feel terror. I felt recognition. A cold, profound, and absolute certainty washed over me. I knew I was in there. I knew I was watching. I knew I was not pretending. And it was leaving me alone. It was passing me by. The procession continued on, their silent footsteps a stark contrast to the endlessly repeating word from the speakers all around me. Pretend. 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 I was the only one not invited to the gathering. I was the anomaly. the one who refused to play along. And in this new insane world, that made me the only true monster. The sun rose over a world that was fundamentally changed. The broadcast from the park's emergency system finally sputtered and died at 6:04 a.m., exactly as the first rays of sunlight hit the valley floor. The silence it left behind was the loudest thing I have ever heard. It was a dead silence. A finished silence. I spent the next hour trying to raise anyone on the radio. I called the ranger station. I called the fire lookouts. I called Miller's cabin. Called Sarah. There was no answer. Only the gentle, indifferent hiss of an open channel. I finally managed to get a signal out to the National Dispatch Center in Boise. I remember the conversation with a surreal clarity. "This is Technician David Harper at the Bridger Teton Communications Hub," I said, my voice hoarse. "I need to report a catastrophic communications failure and a park-wide incident." "We're aware of the outage, Mr. Harper," the dispatcher's calm, bureaucratic voice replied. "We've been trying to reach your sector for hours. What is the nature of the incident?" What could I say? A synthesized voice from God knows where took over my system and hypnotized everyone into joining a death parade with faceless shadow people? I don't know, I stammered. There was a broadcast. An unauthorized one. And I've lost contact with all park personnel. "We are dispatching a team," he said. "They will be there by noon. Stay at your location. Do not leave the hub. Is that understood?" I understood. The team that arrived was not from the Park Service. They arrived in 2 black, unmarked helicopters. They were men in clean, sterile hazmat suits, their faces obscured by reflective visors. They did not speak to me. They moved with a silent, unnerving efficiency. They swept the building, took readings, and collected my data logs. Another man, this one in a simple, gray suit that seemed wildly out of place, was the one who spoke to me. He didn't introduce himself. He just asked questions. "You were the only one in the hub?" "Yes." "You did not leave the building at any point during the broadcast?" "No." "And you observed the procession heading north?" "Yes." "Did any of the entities attempt to communicate with you?" "One of them looked at me," I said, my voice trembling. The man in the suit made a note on a small tablet. "Interesting," he said, more to himself than to me. "A control group of 1. They flew me out that afternoon." As we lifted off, I looked down at the park. I saw their search teams, more men in hazmat suits, moving through the Calter Bay village. It looked normal from above. But it was empty. The cars were still in the parking lots. The boats were still tied to the marina docks. But there were no people. Just a profound, terrible emptiness. I was debriefed for 2 weeks in a windowless room in a building whose location I will never know. They told me a story. A neat, tidy story. They said a severe, localized atmospheric event had caused a massive radio frequency anomaly, which had triggered a feedback loop in my broadcast system. They said the resulting infrasound and low-frequency broadcast had caused temporary, mass hysteria and disorientation among the park's population. They said that the personnel and tourists had simply wandered off into the wilderness, and that, tragically, none of them had been found. It was a good story, a logical story, a story that could be filed away and closed. They told me I was a hero, that by staying at my post I had provided the only clear data stream of the event. They told me I was suffering from severe post-traumatic stress, that my memories of faceless men and whispering voices were a product of my mind trying to make sense of a confusing, traumatic event. They gave me a medal, an honorable discharge, and a very generous pension plan, contingent on my signing a stack of non-disclosure agreements thick enough to stop a bullet. I signed. I took the pension. And I tried to pretend. I live in the city now. I surround myself with noise, with traffic, with music, with the constant chaotic chatter of human life. I cannot stand the quiet. The silence is when I remember. I know what I saw. I was not a control group. I was the one who was immune. The one their broadcast, their signal couldn't reach. Why? Was it my proximity to the source? Was it some quirk of my own brain chemistry? Or was it something else? Sometimes I think about what the man in the suit said. A control group of one. In any experiment, you need a control. You need a baseline to measure the results against. Maybe I wasn't just an accident. Maybe my role in this whole terrible event was simply to be the one who was left to watch. The one who was left to remember and to report. I don't know. I never will. All I know is that when I close my eyes, I can still hear that single synthesized word, echoing in the deep silent valleys of my mind. Pretend. And I know that somewhere out there, in the deep quiet places of the world, there is a story being told. A long, beautiful, and ancient story. And the price of admission is to forget your own. And to join the silent, smiling audience. Forever. Thank you for receiving this report from the Wilderness Protocol. The systems we build to protect us are fragile. And sometimes the clearest warnings are not the ones that tell us to run, but the ones that tell us to pretend everything is fine. That is the most dangerous warning of all. If you believe these accounts must be preserved, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. Your awareness is a protocol in itself. Until next time, be wary of the official stories. And be wary of the quiet.